G'day YouTube. Regardez-vous, my grandfather's shooting box. I always thought it was made of Banksia exclusively. I pretty much took custody of this in about 1975 when I was 14 years old. I had been sent to the second Catholic boarding school in the second term of 1975, and while I was there I discovered they had a rifle range and a rifle club and a rifle team, and if I went there I could shoot their guns, single shot Vostok 22 bolt actions, and it was fun. And I was really enthusiastic when I was telling my parents about it, and I mentioned that, yeah, you're allowed to take your own gun to school in the 1970s. So I heard sewing machine noises in the middle of the night, and my mother, the sewing teacher and Elmer sewing machine agent, was apparently working on this thing. And the next day, during the school holidays, in, let's call it September 1975, my father invited me to go and help him load firewood, and I'm going to say we were probably more or less on the side of Yarraford Road, somewhere out there, around about Bob Weir's property. And out there, after he'd cut the firewood with his Dolmar chainsaw and after I'd helped him load it, he said, "Oh, by the way," and he went and he lifted the seat back on his Volkswagen truck. It was like a combi, but it had a flatbed ute on the back of it. A very useful thing. I wish the hell I still had it. But anyway, he lifted that up and he pulled out particular individual homemade hand-sewn vinyl gun cover, and inside of it there was his father's Springfield Model 98 semi-automatic target rifle, serial number 198, hand filed. And the old man got that out and he said, "Have a look at this." And he showed me how to use it. And he said, "Would you like to take this back to your boarding school?" So that's how come in 1975 I used to take my grandfather's semi-automatic Exhibition 22 target rifle, and I used to take the lock, stock and barrel, the barrel and the lock off the stock, and I used to cross it, like that way and that way, inside my suitcase, and I'd take it to boarding school, and I'd give it to me dormitory master, and he'd put it in the armoury, and then I'd go down every week and I'd shoot the thing. And what I said to the locksmith when I took this thing to him, and I said, I haven't seen a key to this thing since about 1994, because that's how long it is since I've had a gun. But in there, I expect there to be some targets, and I expect there to be a couple of elbow cups. And maybe it's gone mouldy. So I left this thing at the local chemist's with a note to a bloke who I went to school with, and we were in the same class, and to open my grandfather's shooting box, which had spent like 25 years under the veranda on the south side of my squalid hovel, copping the sun, being neglected because I couldn't get into the thing. Yeah, $50 to get into that so I can clean it up and maybe do a bit of honour and justice to my father's father, the wheelwright woodsman coach builder, who not only made the box and owned the gun that I went and took to boarding school when I was rifle team captain at Chevalier College Barrel, but I'm pretty sure he carved that British bulldog head out of oak, which I've been using since 1992 when I broke my foot on a walking stick using the shaft made out of Malacca cane, which my father cut on a, or brought back on a holiday to the Gold Coast that he took in like 1925 or something. Like he was born in 1909. He was 1919, he'd be 10, 1929, he'd be 20. So, yeah, maybe 1929, 1928. During the post-World War One boom time before the 1929 stock market crash, my father went to Queensland on a holiday and he came home with a stick of Malacca cane so he could make himself a walking stick if ever he got so bloody old and so feeble he needed one. Well, he died before that happened. And then I crashed an aeroplane and I'd already inherited his bit of cane. My grandfather's walking stick was slightly too short for me, so I put that one on it. But there used to be, as you can see, a piece of red felt glued inside there, right? That's how my grandfather left it. As a 1.5-year-old, apparently, while he was going ho, 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 ho at me, working that, yeah, I got right into it and I pulled the tongue off a piece of felt. I've never got around to replacing it. One of these days I will. I do actually remember being 1.5 years old in the main street of Glen Innes, being wheeled in a pram by my mother's parents, and I saw my father's father walking up the street, up the footpath. So I sat up and I pointed at him and I said, ho, 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 because that's what he used to say to me. I didn't have any language. It was before I became verbal. All I could do was make noises. And that's how I introduced my father's father to my mother's parents. I'm going to suspect there's not a whole lot of people can tell a story like that without bullshit. But yeah, here I am. People wonder how come I'm a bit of a fucking oddball. Yeah, it was never normal. Not once, not ever. Dad was 28 years older than Mum when I was born. It wasn't until I was 28 years old that I had the faintest, foggiest bloody clue how to be an adult male, because that was when I started role modeling on Dad when he was wasn't until I was 52. He was 28 years older than me Mum. He was 52 when I met him. Welcome to day drinking. This is not the first. And I had no idea that delving into my grandfather's shooting box was going to be quite such an emotional event that it was going to take up a whole bloody day and I was going to have to get pissed to deal with the emotions. You know, welcome to life as a zombie having a good time, because it's better than being dead. Haven't eaten much, but fuck, I've drunken some. But anyway, here is the key, which duly cost me 50 Australian dollar bucks in order to see what lies within Nandy's shooting box. And disclaimer, I have already actually been inside there. I picked it up yesterday. I had sticky taped a couple of bits of paper which had been torn, and I have removed the mould from the leather, and I have applied beeswax to that leather, and I have poured in methylated spirits and dissolved 100 years of congealed spilled gun oil, which was acting as a matrix cement for 100 years worth of torn off cotton, flannelette, fabric, textile fibres, because, like the thing was supposed to be a shooting box. My grandfather used to put his gun oil and his patches and all that stuff in there, and the bottles used to leak and the gun oil used to go out. And then he did that for 30 or 40 years, and then I did it for another 10 or 20 years, and my bottles were plastic. So there was a lot of shit leaked inside of it. So much so that the gunsmith rang me up and said, "Good God, this thing smells like pussy." And I had to explain to him, well, it's actually light machine oil with 25% Dettol mixed into it and used as gun oil, because God knows why, that's what the fashion was in the 1920s. My grandfather did it, my father did it, I grew up on it. The gun oil I used always smelled like Dettol. It's got antiseptic in it. No idea why. Maybe so if your gun blows up, you don't get a wound infection from the debris going through you with shrapnel. I have no idea. But anyway, that's why there was Dettol in the gun oil. So, having wire brushed the outside and hosed it down before taking it to the gunsmith, after bringing it back from the gunsmith, what I've done is I've opened it and I've gone in there and I've poured methylated spirits in, and I've tried to dissolve all the alcohol. And I've poured that out a couple of goes. And I've used a paint scraper to try and get all the congealed crap off the inside. And then I poured boiling water in there after hosing it out. The first time I hosed it out, it all came out looking like engine degreaser, white and milky, right? Because of the Dettol. The second time, the boiling water, it come out clean. The third time come out clean. I've pretty much got back to bare wood on the inside. The plan is now to actually take off the front door and the top door, take off the fittings, sand it back, and I'm going to oil it after I sand it back. And I'm going to try and pretty much zero since major overhaul my grandfather's 100-year-old shooting box. Not that I've got a gun, but it should be fun anyhow. At least it'll make me feel a little bit better about having left the bloody thing neglected for the last 25 odd years. At least my father kept it in a place where it was not in the sunlight and it didn't get weathered and degraded like it was when I left it. So, here we go. Let's see what there be inside. And part one, line one, look at that. That is what quarter cut, milled, finished Banksia looks like when it has not been ultraviolet degraded. That's what the whole box used to look like when I first took custody of this in 1975. Most of the time I left it at home at my parents' place. I don't recall ever taking it to boarding school because my targets used to be kept in my desk and my cleaning gear was kept in the pocket at the end of the gun case, which sort of went about there. So I didn't take this to boarding school, but when I come home I kept it. I did take these to boarding school, and this really mystified the gunsmith. He had no idea, like, what the hell. There's a couple of them, they were very mouldy, and like I've cleaned them with methylated spirits, and I've taken the mould off and I've applied beeswax. And he said, there's two really weird looking leather things in there. I don't know what they're like. They're like some sort of kinky bloody sex aid thing. So I had to explain to him that if you're shooting .303 inch small bore rifles and you're going to go out there and you're going to lay down on a gravel mound and you're going to shoot it with your elbows on the ground, and you're going to do that 10 times per target, if you don't have a leather reinforced elbow cup, you are going to tear the shit out of your shirt. And your missus is going to get the shits with you. Now, my father didn't get to buy his first pair of working boots till he was 14, and he'd been working for his father for a week. And I remember him being pissed off in his old age that his father was sufficiently selfish as to be paying money for ammunition to shoot at paper targets for the fun of it when he was walking barefoot to school. Yeah? And not only did he make his own shooting box, but he had his own hand-sewn leather elbow guards. Now, I used these things all through the 1970s and early 1980s, back when I had guns, and I've never seen anybody else who's got any of them. As far as I know, I'm the only prick on the planet who's got their grandfather's leather elbow pads, elbow cups for target shooting. You might be expecting me to be taking the elbow cups off, but no, not at all. What I'm going to do is to fit the other one too. And then I can show you what the box is actually good for. But first, let me do a little bit of bragging. See these? 1976 vintage, warbles on a lot. 22 caliber long rifle, 25 yard small bore rifle targets. I could show them from the top to the bottom, but let's do it the other way around. You have an unscored target, and we have another one. We have a 77. We have a February 1976 score of 70. We have another 70. March 76, 71, 73. March 75, 85. Sighted too fast, take more time. March 1976, rapid fire, 78. I had a semi-automatic 22 exhibition target rifle. It wasn't hard to beat a Vostok. The way we used to do it, they would start firing and I would start loading. I would load 10 rounds into a 15-shot tube magazine. I would then lay down. I would then work the action. I would then commence firing, and I would then beat the shit out of all of them with both time and accuracy. None of them could get above 60 in 60 seconds in terms of points. Rapid fire with a single shot bolt action. Technology for the win. 12 seconds, 10 rounds, 78 points. March 73, application 83 out of a possible 100. Application is where you pay attention and you take your time and you try not to fuck up. I make it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, 4 in the black. Take better aim and squeeze the trigger, don't pull. Notes to self. Whoopsie, 2 out there. 1, 2, 3. So yeah, 5 outside the black. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep, 5 each. God almighty. Can you imagine critiquing targets in 1976? How many people are obsessive compulsive autistic sufficiently to keep their 1976 22 small bore targets in their grandfather's shooting box? Not many of the 8 billion. One will wager. 84, 85, by the end of March, 85, 86, another 86, 88, held together with sticky tape. 89, and 92. I did, on one occasion, about 3 years after that, I shot an actual 98 out of the possible 100. But back in 1984, 85, I was such a piss-proud ponce into braggadocio that the target, which I shot 98 on, it used to hang up on the wall. So I don't actually have it because it got lost, but you know. Whoopsie. Back in the days when I had 4 guns, maybe 5 guns hanging on the wall, and I used to shoot all the meat that I ate, the one second from the bottom, what that is this. Back in the days when it used to be a ballistic pellet projector rather than a 1000 to 4000 millimeter focal length 35 millimeter ultra super telephoto camera. It actually takes a little bit of hard work if you want to be an actually serious So, okay, right. What was the box actually intended to be good for? Well, part 1, line 1, note that this is Banksia. Banksia, 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 Banksia. The bottom is Banksia. However, that moulding there, that, I'm pretty sure, it might be Banksia, but it might be cedar. But that is cedar. That vertical edge down there, that's cedar. And the whole theory was, my grandfather wanted to drop his spotting telescope, which folded up and fit in this space here, right? And on top of that, he would have all of his cleaning gear. And there were other things wrong with it, which included the idea that the oil would spill and it would all go down and it would form a sludge and it would solidify and dry out and harden and soak into the wood, and it would become a really major sort of a cleaning problem, and it would lead the locksmith to conclude that it smelled, quote, like pussy. Actually, I think that is Meranti pine on top of cedar. But it's all nailed together except where it's screwed. And these reinforcements here are to take these screws through the lid. And if you have a look at this as a sawmiller, look you at that. It's quarter cut milled. It's perfect oak, right? Or Banksia. Like, this is really, really, really good wood. And the idea was that the old bloke, Nandy, as I knew him, he would put this into his sidecar on his motorbike in the 1950s, and he'd have his spotting telescope, he'd have his boxes of ammunition, he'd have his cleaning patches and his pull through, and he'd have his rifle sticking up there, and he'd have his elbow patches ready to go. And he would ride from Glasson Street up to the other side of the timber dump, and he'd get to the rifle range and he'd go over there and prepare everything. And the preparations would include sticking 10 rounds of 303 short magazine Lee Enfield ammunition into those holes there. And then, with his box lying down there on the ground, the grand plan is you open the lid as far as it will go. Right? See that there then? That's the limit of the opening of the lid. And after that, you put it on its side, wherein at the lid acts as a prop which holds your 10 rounds at 45 degrees to everything, parallel to you, so that when you go to be shooting at the target, which is going to be out there somewhere, and using this YouTube video movie prop in order to illustrate the principle, this is roughly kind of sort of what my grandfather had in mind with his shooting box. That's all set up on the mound. Pretend this is a short magazine Lee Enfield instead of a bent stick. So the old man sits up here and he goes bang, click, 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 and he pulls that in and he drops it in and he goes bang with his feet correctly assumed and click, 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 and he can work from his shooting box and he does not have to move his elbows. He can get from one end to the other, he can pull his rounds out, he can work his bolt action. This thing is not a short magazine Lee Enfield, so the angles and the dangles are not exactly perfectly lined up, but you can see how the trigger and the sights would work if this was sufficiently illegal as to be equipped with the rubbers. And it's not, so therefore it's not an illegal catapult. What it is a movie prop for a YouTube video. And you know what? Guess whose mum birthed a smart ass? But in saying that, a smart ass who's capable of staying at least marginally within the law of a land which is apparently collapsing under the impact of global warming. There you go, Tom the Frugal Prepper. What for do you think about that? There. There, then, there. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Okay. Ciao. Yeah. I fucking enjoyed making this video. Not a normal video, but something I've been wanting to do for a long time. And it only cost me $50. And it only took a couple of months to make the video or the movie prop for the YouTube video with which to illustrate the principle. Warbles on a lot to YouTube. Ciao.